Welcome to this video on milestones and measurements that matter. This video is being made because a lot of us, at least at some point, and maybe right now, have measurements, have milestones, have goals that we are aiming for that are really not that aligned with our big purpose. And there's a better way to go about it. And so that's what we are exploring today. The idea of this is figuring out what is meaningful to us and why. This is very related to the whole goal stack thing, but now this is getting very specific on that yearly, monthly, even weekly timescale here to make sure that we are measuring the right things. A little framework you can put in your information here to see if it checks out is, if I do thing, then I will blah blah blah, value-based, purpose-based thing. So if I lose 20 pounds of fat, then I will feel like I can lead by example for my kids in an effective way. I will feel like a better husband, a better father, and that I'm taking care of my health long term, and I'm going to be able to do all these meaningful life things, and it's going to be lovely, lovely, right? If I hurt myself in the gym by doing stupid exercises, then I will have a hard time maintaining my health and doing the hiking and biking and rock climbing and playing with my kids that I want to do. And so knowing both of those gets us a little bit closer to finding out the best way to do something. You can use that if-then structure to get clarity on a whole bunch of different things, not just fitness. Running through a whole bunch of things with that if-then logic can help you falling into the trap of the one measurement thing. If you have one measurement without context, it is a very dangerous thing that can derail people horrendously. And here's a funny story to illustrate it, is the Fitbit step counter watch thing that got released several years ago. And there are some reviews that was like, this is a demon that will ruin your life. And what it did is, it has little milestone achievements and rewards, right? If you take a certain amount of steps, you can take a certain amount of steps in a day, and then you go, oh, you won. Just take another 2,000 steps to achieve the next reward. And then, oh, you won. It's just get 3,000 bonus steps in today and you can achieve the next one. And people got obsessed and they started pursuing the goal of more steps, of achieving the next level up in Fitbit, whatever it is. And this ended up being very detrimental to the life. They'd be up at 12 at night, not sleeping because they're doing stairs to get to the next level of the Fitbit thing. It was absolutely nuts. And this wasn't just one person. This was a significant number of people that got caught in the trap of optimizing for the wrong goal, for the wrong measurement, for the wrong milestone. Same thing happens with weight loss. People get obsessed about weight loss and they sacrifice so many other more meaningful things in the pursuit of weight loss. We don't want to be hung up on one specific measurement when it is a whole matrix of things that we care about, of things that we value. Like I said before, if we, get to the target weight that we want at the expense of losing our muscle, losing our strength, not being well fed nutritionally because maybe we starved ourselves and maybe we dehydrated ourselves or whatever, we just wanted to see the scale, have that number. There are so many people that do horrendous things, that are bulimic or anorexic or whatever it is, just to try to find that goal. It doesn't hold up or long term. It has all these other negative side effects that are probably worse than just being several pounds overweight, for instance. We do not want to be there. That is why I'm making this video, because I really do not want any of us to go there ever again. So the solution is choose multiple subjective and objective measurements and measure all of them consistently, minimizing variables like a scientist, so we have accurate data. Objective measurements are physically measurable, like somebody else could measure these and it would be accurate, right? And so these are things like body fat percentage, these are things like blood sugar, waist to hip ratio, max strength, like a 1 rep max, for instance, the beat test where you run back and forth, woo, which number can you get to, agility drills, you have speed tests or whatever. You measure girth measurements with either the same size clothes or with an actual tape measure thing. You can measure your lean mass in a fancy body scan and a DEXA scan. Bone density you could measure as well. Time to run any sort of distance. How long does it take you to run a mile? You could test that pace, for instance. You could test how high you can jump, how long you can jump, whatever it is. You can physically measure your joint mobility and your joint alignment at postural defaults, etc., etc., etc. These are all physical measurements that may be more or less important to you. Not everybody cares about how long they can jump in a single bound, but they might care about their ability to have functional muscle that supports themselves in a non-painful way. That is why we're talking about subjective measurements as well. Subjective measurements are basically ones that only you can measure. Only you can measure the amount of pain in your body, unless somebody maybe hooks up to your brain to try to read the nerve signals. Loads, by the way, or F loads, is frequency, location, onset, duration, and severity. It's a good little framework to measure pain and measure progress of joint pain reduction, for instance. Now, average energy levels, sure, maybe somebody else could be like, oh, you look a little tired today, but only know how you were actually feeling. Overall quality of life, that's a subjective measurement. Your ability to have fun in various activities, like snowboarding one. I've had plenty of people come to me and I cannot ski more than one lap, and it's just a painful, sucky one lap because my knees hurt. And working with me, and they're able to ski all day for 5 days in a row with their friends and have a blast and jump over the moguls and everything because their knees don't hurt. That is subjective measurement with tangible outcome. And so there's a few things going on there, and that's why we want to think about all of these things that we are measuring on a regular basis to make sure that we are on track and make the progress we want to make, or we need to change something if these aren't working. A few other subjective measurements are the sense of discipline, the sense of self-mastery, the sense of being able to do what we say we do over the long term. Balance on the wheel of life. We'll talk more about the wheel of life later if you're not familiar with that. Quality of relationships, etc., whatever is meaningful to you as well. I bet none of these on this list, feeling, looking good with mirror, whatever, I bet none of these you'd say, oh no, I don't care about that at all. But some you probably care about more than others. Some you can measure more effectively than others, and so those might be better for you. If you are ready, literally write them down right now. Write down, you can look at the list or you can come up with your own. These are just examples. What is meaningful to you? Write them down. I like to give at least 2 objective measurements, 2 subjective measurements. And these are ones that you're going to measure consistently. So there's a few things that we want. One, we want it to be easy enough that we will actually do it. We will actually take the time, a minute, whatever it is, to measure it and to note it down somewhere. And that can seem oh, it's a bit of work, but what gets measured gets managed. Even if we do nothing else consciously, we just start measuring something. The science shows that we make better choices and thus improving the condition one way or another, even if we aren't super clear about how we want to improve it. Just measuring things helps, so that's why we're doing this here. And by the way, we aren't just going to be measuring the overall outputs, we're also going to be measuring the consistency of our inputs. And so that's another conversation we're going to get into another time. So I'm going to illustrate why this matters with a little story. The names haven't changed, but this is a real story. And so one person, we're going to call him Bob, had the challenging goal of losing 25 to 35 pounds. Anywhere in there would have been considered a good win. And they did a good job at setting an upper limit so they didn't go insane. They say, I want to lose more than 25 pounds, and then they go and take it into an unhealthy place. So they did a good job setting the goals, 25 to 35 pounds. That was where we wanted to be. And to do that, Bob decided to sit on a stationary bike in the gym for about an hour. And they did this almost every day of the week, and they wanted to eat less calories. They didn't change their diet a whole bunch, they just ate less. And, subjective measurements, we don't really know exactly, but over the course of 5 months, it resulted in some short-term weight loss. Not surprising there. It did not result in Bob actually getting stronger in pretty much any way except a little bit of cycle-specific leg strength. Quality of life was basically the same. Didn't really do anything. It just wasn't a big whoop. There was no oh my god, you're so amazing. Oh, you can do in this sport now. You can. There wasn't anything incredible. And the problem with that is that weight gain was very, very easy because he cut calories and didn't actually improve muscle mass. Weight comes back very, very easily. So that meant more extreme dieting was needed to lose more weight if that was. And so that led to this condition where she either needed to now eat even less food because she's lighter to keep that weight, which is hard to do long term, you feel tired and whatnot, or something had to change at some point. And so we'll illustrate this with another guy. We'll call him Donovan. And he had the same goal of lose 25-30 pounds as an objective measurement, but went about it in a bit of a different way. So the inputs Donovan chose to go about this was, one, he invested with a coach, me, and then we got clarity on what they actually wanted, a bit of a life vision. We talked about that regularly, right? It was on top of the mind. We did resistance training 2 to 4 times per week, and different splits, whatever we were doing, whatever seemed best for the life at the time. 2 times per week, we also did a little bit of high intensity interval stuff, which was pretty challenging, like get the heart rate up kind of stuff. And in the diet side of things, we hardly made any adjustments besides from eating more protein. Donovan's diet didn't have a lot of junk in it, but the little bit of candy or cake, whatever, we did cut out more because he had this big meaningful goal and this life vision, which cake did not fit into, but more protein did. It's the results in the same amount of time, working out in the gym at the same time even. Now the results for Donovan was actually slower weight loss. It looked like, well, maybe it isn't working as well. The scale isn't going down as fast, but luckily that wasn't the only measurement we cared about, because Donovan also got way stronger. And we liked that trend. We liked being way stronger. We also were learning principles that seemed important and useful over the long haul of life and for the kids and whatnot. We did improve long-term quality of life. And at the end of the 5 months, well, we did actually lose more than 25 pounds. And I bet it was fat because we built muscle at the same time, right? So got under 200 pounds, we lost more fat, and it was also easier to maintain that because the diet was sustainable and you had a higher metabolism because you've been doing effective resistance training, all the long-term health benefits that come with that. And that meant that the fat wasn't going to be gained back real fast like bulbs. So I know that's a pretty basic story, but I hope that helps you make sure that you are measuring multiple things. Before we end this video, we need to talk about measuring accurately and consistently. Like any good scientist tries to minimize the variables that could skew data. And if we have the wrong data, then we could make a decision that is actually totally throws us off track. Maybe what we are doing is working just fine, but if we measure it wrong and then we think, oh no, God, it's not working, and then we change everything, then we just threw our progress unnecessarily. We just threw it away basically and made things overcomplicated. So that is why we want to take our time and take many measurements and see the trends overall. For curiosity, you could step on the scale anytime. It's interesting. I love seeing weird stuff. Oh, I gained 8 pounds today. Oh, I lost it the next day. Water, weight, food, whatever it is. But when you're actually measuring it and recording it, you want it to be as consistent as possible. If you're using a pair of pants, like jeans or something, you want to make sure that it's not shrinking and expanding if you put it in the dryer or you wash it, right? You want to make sure that whatever material the clothing is, that it is literally the same size. That's why using a tape measure might be a lot better idea, because you can control the variable a bit more. Now you might be wondering, how the hell do you measure subjective measurements accurately and consistently? Because there are just so many variables all the time. We can still find a way to track it as accurately as reasonably achievable. I use that phrase all the time, AMARA, as much as reasonably achievable. So measuring subjective and objective measurements consistently. One, we want consistency of method. Are we measuring body fat? Are we measuring total weight? Are we measuring girth? Are we measuring the ability to run 1 mile as fast as possible? What are we measuring? Keep that consistent, and that way you have actually a useful plot of data over time. And yes, this is a commitment. I mean, if you hate it after 1 week and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do this consistently because it cost me $80 to get a DEXA scan. I'm not going to do that every week or every month because I need to drive 2 hours. Okay, scrap that idea, do something else. But the longer term data you have, the more you know what works and what doesn't work long term. And so yes, it's a commitment, at least for the next 3 months. Maybe you'll keep it for 6 months. Maybe you'll keep it for 6 years. Commit to the method. So that's why we want to make this easy, cheap, affordable, convenient, and whatnot to measure. Now, the second important thing is consistency of equipment. If you're using any sort of equipment to measure this, keep that as consistent as possible, or make a note. I measured myself on a different scale, like a digital scale, one here, and then another, scale over here. They could read different measurements, even if you stepped on one and then you stepped on the other. Also, by the way, if you're using a scale, if it's digital, keep the batteries stacked in them, because they don't work right if the batteries aren't good in them. By the way, I know somebody that's, oh my gosh, I lost 15 pounds because they replaced the batteries in their scale. They were getting really discouraged before that. That's why this matters. Consistency of timing is the other thing. So if we're using scale weight, even though it's not my favorite measurement, if we're using scale weight, then I suggest doing it in the morning, on pick a day, Sunday, after you've gone pee in the morning, but before you've drinking any glass of water or eaten anything, of course. You can measure yourself right then, and that at least gives you some sort of sense of consistency. You're not going to eat the exact same thing every single week in the same amounts, whatever. You're not going to go nuts with controlling variables, and I understand that life's full of variables, but do what you can to minimize them so you have accurate, useful data. In summary, both subjective and objective measurements are essential to successfully tracking progress that matters to you. What is the most important thing? What is the big domino? What are we aiming at? What are we optimizing for? Is this the most effective way to measure that? Is this the most effective way to let me know that I am on track? Take this seriously. Measure actual data. And if you want to read that book, by the way, there's a book called The Most Important Thing. I quite like it. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for focusing on what is important. And come ready to dig deep and make meaningful commitments and measure wisely. And I look forward to seeing the data, and I know you look forward to seeing the data too. I'll see you later.